There are 151 Pokédex entries in the game Pokemon Yellow, and currently it is my goal to complete the challenge of beating the game, or attempting to beat the game, with a solo challenge of every single one of those Pokédex entries. And today we are taking a look at entry number 43, which is the Pokemon Oddish. Oddish is a great little pre-evolution base Pokemon. It is grass poison, one of the many within Gen 1. There's only one single all-grass type Pokemon within this entire generation, which is Tangela. Everyone else is this dual typing, which will be somewhat beneficial, but at times also a little bit of something that will cause some issues against perhaps like a psychic type, for example. But with the good thing here is that we have had some struggles in past episodes, recently even, with some of the Pokemon that don't get a move at all for a number of levels, or you need to level them up and grind a lot in order to be able to make it past Brock. But because we are a grass type Pokemon, we have quite a few good little tips and tricks that will make it easier for us. Now, you'll find here in this beginning of the video that I do a reset within a minute, immediately, because I beat the rival. And I know that feels very counterintuitive, but honestly, a lot of the times we kind of want the Jolteon team or maybe the Flareon team for a lot of the Pokemon that we have used so far in this challenge. But I actually think that the Vaporeon team, which is what you get if you get a loss in this category in the Pokemon Lab against your rival, I think the Vaporeon team is the best outcome for a Pokemon like Oddish. So we want to take a couple resets here, make sure that we get the loss, make sure we're going up against the team that we want, and continue to set ourselves up for a successful run. Because Oddish has quite a few little things that he has going for him outside of what a Pokemon like Zubat or Jigglypuff in recent episodes have very much struggled with. Now, we do start off with a move like Absorb, which does not do a lot of damage. It is a 20 power move. It gets boosted to 30 because of a same type attack bonus. We will not get a move that does damage until level 24, which is Acid. We'll also get a same type attack bonus for that one because we are grass poison. And there's a lot of other moves that at our disposal here. There's all of the different types of spores / powders. Sleep Powder is a pretty good option. I think in Generation 1, there's a lot of strategies that you can use with that. I don't really want to use the other two just because I don't really think that they're great for a solo challenge, at least not for me personally. I don't really have any strategies that I think are beneficial for them, but we also have some other moves to kind of consider. Petal Dance is a move that can end up doing a lot of damage to us because of confusion. Don't really want to mess around with that. Solar Beam does need some setup time. It means that we can take a hit, maybe two, before we can get that maneuver off. Feels kind of like a big gamble to me. So really, we're going to be using a lot of the moves that don't do as much damage, but can be very consistent for this Pokemon. So that's what we are looking at for Oddish today. When you look at the rest of the moves that he has here in the move pool on the side, there are not a lot of moves that I think are very beneficial to this Pokemon. We do not need Mimic. Oddish can do this without the usage of Mimic easily. And Mega Drain is one of the moves that we will get later on when we go up against Erica. We will be able to use that in place of Absorb. Another thing that will actually be very great for this Pokemon just because it will mean that we can get some health back while also doing damage. So that's pretty great. There is no Giga Drain in this generation, so Mega Drain with its 40 base power is the best that we kind of got in that front. But there's some other great moves in here, and especially Swords Dance. We will come back to that one later on in the video though, but believe me, Swords Dance is going to be crucial for a lot of things. We have already made it to Brock. We are less than 10 minutes in. Like I said, because we are a grass type Pokemon, we're here at level 13, and a lot of that is just from having gone up against all the trainers in Viridian, and we're already done. And that means that we can then do a little bit of a time jump here. We can bypass all of Mount Moon for this video. There's not really any kind of challenges there. We do see a big time skip just because I did take the time to go up against every trainer there. One of those things where I don't necessarily need the grinding per se, but I do think it's going to help in the later run of the game where once things really start kicking off, I don't want to spend too much time doing a lot of grinding. So this way I can also be leveled up enough where Oddish shouldn't be one shot by any kind of moves, because even though he's super effective, as you can see, my special is still pretty low. So luckily we are now at a high enough level though where we are able to make it through her entire gym's trainers easily. Staryu goes down pretty quickly and Absorb is cleaning up. It's great though because it also obviously heals us, so even if they're hitting us for some damage, we still end up at mostly perfect health. We then get to learn a brand new move in Acid, and then we get to move on and go to the next challenge, which will actually be the rival. Typically I do the rival before I do Misty's gym, but Oddish didn't need that extra training. Oddish was ready to go. So we're going to do a quick little healing, then we're going to go up against the rival before moving on to the SS and we'll get some extra levels there as well. But for now, let's enjoy this kind of easier fight. Now, we are in a little bit of a dangerous territory because it does have a move like Peck, which does do a lot of damage, and we're not able to really hit Spearow for a lot just yet. But as you can see, Sleep Powder is, as I mentioned earlier, a pretty good strategy for moments like that. We can just sort of put Spearow asleep and we can just sort of chip away at it. That's all we need. Then we get to use Absorb against Sandshrew, which is super effective. Hyper Fang can do a lot of damage actually if we're not too careful, and our defense has been lowered, so we do have to kind of keep an eye on that. But luckily Acid is pretty strong, and with that boost from our same type attack bonus, it's doing 60. Feels pretty good. Then now we're getting something with a little bit more power. And that power is going to help us continue to move forward through SS and speeding through defeating every single trainer on this ship. I do think that I could clean up this area of the game quite a bit, actually. Like, I'm already starting to think about the fact that I know what the final time is. We'll get to it, obviously, before the end of the video. But once we get there, like, I can already count a couple places where I could shave some time off, and I think we can get a pretty good time with this Oddish. We're still going to do pretty well today, and you can kind of see that where we've already defeated the rival again. So far, the rival is really proving to not be an issue at all. With a Pokemon like Zubat, obviously, always a challenge. And what's not a challenge is Lieutenant Surge. I honestly sit here, this is maybe the longest I've ever sat there thinking for a brief moment of, do I even bother putting him to sleep? I think it helps just because Mega Kick can do a lot of damage, but in the end, I put him to sleep, get a couple acids off, and Surge is done. Then we get to do one of my favorite little forms of editing, where I just go through and I kind of rinse the floor with Erica's gym. I'm not exactly doing a crazy amount of damage per se, but honestly, they can't stand the absolute raw power of an acid from this little spring onion with legs. Spring onion? He's some kind of little plant buddy. I don't know. Oddish is great though. I didn't really use him a lot growing up, but I do really dig the design of Oddish a lot. He's fun, and the back sprite here is awful, but it's also great. I like that it kind of looks like a mohawk instead of just sort of like leafage. Pretty fun. Kind of makes him look like a Zoombini. If you know what a Zoombini is, hell yeah. You know, 90s kids rise up. Anyway, speaking of the raw power of acid, down goes Erica, the 4th gym leader, and we also get the move of Mega Drain, which is going to be something that we hold on to for the rest of this video. Mega Drain is going to be the best possible scenario for our grass type moves for today. Again, Petal Dance could probably also be good, but I don't really like playing that confusion game. It just feels like a little bit too high of a risk for this weaker defensed little buddy of ours. So we move on to the secret base for Team Rocket. We are taking on, obviously, the main Team Rocket trio, who, not really a challenge. But then again, what else is new in terms of Team Rocket, I don't know, power or power levels, whatever. We get to move on to Giovanni for the very first time. I struggle a little bit, I guess, with my spatial awareness. Watching that back, I was kind of like, I probably could cut that down, but there is something pretty funny about me just sort of bashing my head around his office instead of fighting him. And fight him I do, though. Obviously, with the grass move of Mega Drain, the first two go down easily. Persian falls to a couple moves, and then we get to just sort of dig our way out. And it feels like we're speeding along. Obviously, we're an hour-ish in with 4 badges. I feel like we can be going faster. There's obviously still some times, like I was mentioning earlier, that we could reduce. We can make this a little bit more succinct in future runs. But honestly, after the last few Pokemon that we've had to deal with, this feels really great. This feels like I am kind of just speeding through this game. It feels like I am completely like back on track in terms of better gameplay, you know? And that is also, again, a thing that makes me feel a little bit more validated, you know? Just in the sense of it's not me, it's the Pokemon. Either way, we do finish up the Pokemon Tower after we defeat the rival yet again. And we are now moving on to Koga. Now, I am showcasing a little bit of the fights here just because there are going to be a couple tougher ones. But it is also going to be a great moment for us to showcase something very special. Now, you'll maybe recognize the fact that I have a new move in my learning pool over here on the left-hand side of the screen. I did make a little pit stop before Koga's gym, which was I did drop by Silphco, a place that we will have to go back to later, but I just immediately kind of skipped ahead a little bit to make sure that I could pick up the move Swords Dance, because that's where it is. It's over on the, I believe it's the 9th floor, maybe the 7th floor. It's one of those two. I think 9th floor is where you can heal, 7th floor might be where Swords Dance is. It's one of those though, it's in that area. You pick up the move, and Swords Dance is a stat changing move, which is great, right? It's something that lets you move your attack power, gets a little boost of 1/8 times, you know, however many times it's going up. And this moves it up by 2 stages. You can go up to a maximum of 6. So in order to get your power up to +6, you only have to use 3 Swords Dance. Now, the thing is that there's also a boost to our attack already because of the badge that we got in Pewter City. You can see the sort of faint outline of it underneath that +4 on the left-hand side of the screen. But there's a fun little feature here, or glitch, or whatever you want to call it, within Generation 1, which is that anytime you have a badge that is boosting something, anytime you then use a stat move, anything that is boosted currently will have that percentage re-rolled and added on top of what it currently sees. So right now my attack and my defense are both at 100, but each time I use Swords Dance, yes, I'm moving up 2 stages for my attack power, but it will also move up my defense at the same time. So my defense will get a boost. And eventually, when I get the other 2 badge boosts as well, Swords Dance will end up moving all 4 of my stats up, which is pretty great for being able to speed through some of the harder fights, especially right here, right? Hypno is pretty devastating for Oddish. 1 Psychic and it's either completely over or very close to being over, right? And that's going to be the biggest thing that we see. I think this is maybe the first real time that we're going to need to see moves like this. We didn't need anything for the first 3 gyms. The first 2 were super effective against. The 3rd one is just trash. But the 4th one, you know, we could have maybe used these. It would have been okay, obviously, because we still beat her without having badge boosting moves. But then here, getting to the next thing, getting to this gym here, there are so many psychic type Pokemon, and Oddish is a little squishy in the special department. It's not awful, right? But the fact that I'm not going to get any kind of boost to it means that we desperately need to make sure that when we hit things hard, it's going to hit, right? So what we're doing here is, as I put Venonat to sleep, then I get to use the badge boost twice. And now all of my acid attacks, which are already super effective, are now getting boosted in a great sense here. And he throws by using Toxic. If he had used Psychic, that probably would have been a reset, but it doesn't matter. He doesn't use it, and I get to just cruise on out of here with a new boost to my speed as I go up against my rival. Now, here we are back at Silphco, back at it again with the Krispy Kreme. No backflips, though, only Acid, Swords Dance, and Mega Drains against Pokemon like Sandslash. Now, Sandslash did not go down quickly or easily, and That does make me a little nervous for this Pokemon, but remember, this is a base evolution Pokemon. There is still so much that obviously the next size, oh boy. Ooh, Aurora Beam hit harder than I was expecting. I'm not going to lie to you, but it doesn't matter. It just means that when we get to Gloom and Vileplume, we're going to be obviously cruising through sections of the game. Because if Oddish can be pretty good at someone who is, like I said earlier, pretty squishy, just means that as he blooms, he will bloom into something even better. Now, we will go up against the Team Rocket trio for the final time here. So, 07 in chat or F to pay respects. They're done. They're dusted. And so I can do a little save, do a little heal, get down tonight. Then I get to move on to Giovanni. Giovanni is still kind of one of those things, like we've talked about this in previous videos, where one of the cool things about his situation is it kind of matches the vibe of the rival, right? So every time we go up against him, he gets a little bit more difficult. Things evolve, things change. We now have an Nidorino on the team. Nidoqueen is now here as well. Onyx is gone, which is a little interesting, but I guess, we're just trying to keep a little bit of separation between Bruno and Brock as well. It's very quick. It's very easy. Nidoqueen was probably the hardest thing to fight there, but it didn't matter in the long run. So we get to move on to Sabrina. And let me tell you, in Generation 1, Sabrina's scary, okay? Sabrina, at least if you're a poison type Pokemon, Sabrina, mad scary. Psychic type moves and psychic Pokemon in Generation 1 were extremely OP, and it is kind of showcased right there. Oddish gets taken out in one hit. Psychic was one of the most insane moves, I feel like, as a kid. Seeing that move show up on any other team felt awful. And nowadays, Psychic isn't even necessarily that scary in kind of future generations. But I do think that anytime I see Psychic in this generation, it's kind of like an instant, okay, hang on, we gotta be paying attention now. And that's kind of what's happening here. We get taken out. I use a couple of the rare candies. We still need to keep some for later, but we haven't even found most of them within the game. There's a bunch of them like later on in the game that you pick up throughout the overworld rather, and some of them are hidden, so we'll still pick up some of those in a little bit. Now, we're going up against this team, and they have used Flash 4 times, which really hits my accuracy in an awful way, but it also boosts my attack. And so, to some extent, still kind of a throw. If they had just gone for Psychic a couple of times, we would have been dead. But either way, we luckily get through with only a single reset against Sabrina, and we get to move on to Blaine. I never show Cinnabar Island because it's very, very rough on the eyes, but it doesn't really matter. You don't need to see Pokemon Mansion. It's mostly just a puzzle. And, when you're kind of speeding through and showcasing the Pokemon, you don't need to see the puzzle aspect of things. Now, what is also a little puzzling is how I'm going to make it through this fight and why I'm even attempting to continue on. We are now at 24 health, but we do one hit Rapidash. That feels crazy. I take the time to put Arcanine to sleep, but I didn't think I was going to one-shot it. I was right, but because it was asleep, we make it through with 4 health. That is a single attempt at Blaine, and we make it through. I'm not 100% sure if we earned it. Feels a little bit more of luck than it is power, but I will take it. We are now level 66 going up against Giovanni. Giovanni can be a little tough. Some of the ground type moves can actually be kind of devastating just because of the poison dual typing. But at the end of the day, we are sitting here with 1 accuracy debuff, and while that does make me a little less effective, like I mentioned earlier, it will give me a little bit of a boost to some of my other moves. Because of the way that the badge boost glitch happens, accuracy also changes things. So that means that we are now at 535 for attack power. Our special is only at 234, but that's okay because we aren't really necessarily looking to special our way through here per se until the last couple of Pokemon, and we're still doing enough damage that I think we're okay, right? Obviously, Nidoking took a few hits, but that's okay. 1 shot is all you need for Rhydon. Honestly, even without the badge boost, I think that would have happened. I think that, at the very least, Rhydon would go down instantly. 4 times effective against him. Yeah, we're good. We then get to move on. We're going to do some healing here once again. You always heal after Giovanni. You also always save. I don't think I did. I was watching the footage, but it does go by so quickly sometimes that I actually don't think I did save, and so I should have learned my lesson. And I feel very confident here. This is a very overly confident guy. This is sort of like having checkpoint confidence, but I didn't save at the checkpoint. So this is a false checkpoint confidence that I'm experiencing at this point, but that's okay. We are using some boosts here. We are going to get through all of these Pokemon as long as we outspeed Kadabra. We're fine. Vaporeon, once again, you got to be concerned about moves like Aurora Beam, but it doesn't have it at this point for some reason. Feels very weird. There's no ice moves that are effective. It uses acid armor, so we get to defeat the rival kind of for free. And therefore, we can make it through Victory Road, and we can go on to the Elite Four. As always, one of my first steps is I'm going to drop off all of my Pokemon here at the PC. Then we do some healing. We grab a few full restores, just at least one for after every single fight, because I can't use any items in battle. And then we move on to Lorelei. Now, this is a tough one, right? Because there is a very even match sort of situation happening here. Everything except for Jinx on her team has a water dual typing, which does mean that all of my moves like Mega Drain, specifically, will do twice the damage, right? But then when you also look at it, because they have the ice typing, the ice is very effective against us. Or if you're Slowbro, she still has psychic types. So there is something effective for every single one of these Pokemon against Oddish. It does leave us with only 31 health going up against Lapras. One of the biggest problems that we have there is a couple of different factors. We do lose because Sleep Powder, for whatever reason, the move fails. It does give me the specific flavor text of it didn't affect it, which doesn't really make sense to me. They should just say failed, but it's weird to get upset about a game that came out well over 20 years ago. So we move forward. I'm an adult. I don't need to be upset about it. We get to continue to use our moves. Now, you'll notice that this time I took a slightly different approach. I forgot going into this last fight that I was going to level up in the middle of the fight, which is something that I typically try to avoid. That's one of the reasons why you hold on to the rare candies, because when you use the badge boost glitch, it gets reset, or at least the other moves or effective, boosts on the other three stats will get reset when that happens. So I wanted to wait till I hit level 71, then I use the boost, which makes it much more easy for us to move past Lorelei. As you can see, that fight was way easier. Yeah, Slowbro was a little bit tougher, but it wasn't needed, In the end, Slowbro was easier to take down than Jinx would have been, or especially Lapras. Lapras is actually pretty devastating. We then get to move past the first Pokemon for Bruno. Bruno is not a challenge. A lot of Pokemon, like content creators specifically, that go through Gen 1, and even more specifically, I think, potentially at least, is Pokemon Yellow. I think a lot of people end up calling him the Hiker instead of Bruno. They don't even talk about him as if he's an Elite Four member, because an Oddish just made it through there almost as easily as he did against Lieutenant Surge, which is not really a great indicator for that guy. What is then tough is Agatha. I am speeding up my already sped up footage just because, I don't want to sit here and wax poetic on these battles, but it is something that we've seen time and time again. Agatha is very difficult. It's also the same thing that I was talking about with Sabrina. Psychic, in particular, is a pretty devastating move for a Pokemon like Oddish. Now, there's a brief moment here where I thought maybe being paralyzed could be good for me just because they can't put me to sleep, but it also means that they definitely outspeed me, so it doesn't end up being a good thing, so I don't know why I've really stuck with it. So, I took that lesson, I think, pretty easily, moved past it pretty quickly, and then we're going back in. So what you really desperately need is you need to be able to put Gengar to sleep, like we do here. Then we need to boost ourselves up so that we are outspeeding everything. One of the biggest problems is the final Gengar. At level 74, we are still not outspeeding that final Gengar at all. So that's a bad sign. And of course, you know, our little acid move is still not doing a crazy amount of damage. So there's a lot of different factors here that can be pretty bad. The only Pokemon that we are okay against here is Arbok. But if we don't outspeed and hit Arbok hard enough, he can also paralyze us and make us too slow. So there's a lot of things here that really can go wrong with these fights. And it's going wrong here with being confused. That can also be really bad, especially with a higher attack now at this point. We're hitting ourselves pretty heavily. We're also luckily boosted on the defense, but still, it's a gamble. Confuse rate is pretty big. Luckily, we still get sleep powder off. If it stays asleep, we can at least heal a little bit. It's not doing a lot of damage. Little chip damage, though, can help tremendously. They'll probably use a super potion. She does. And then now that we're fully healed up, no longer confused, we acid, we get through. It didn't matter if we weren't outspeeding. At the end of the day, the usage of Confuse Ray instead of Psychic was definitely a moment in which Agatha throws the fight. We then go ahead and use another one of the rare candies that we have in our pocket to get us to level 75, so that way we do not level up in the middle of the fight against Lance. Lance is tough because, you know, not a lot of the stuff for the first 3 Pokemon is very good against Oddish. Ice Beam for the one random Dragonair that does have that move is bad. Thunder Wave would be not great, just because then we're definitely not outspeeding Aerodactyl, but we weren't really to begin with anyway. Hyper Beam can still hit pretty hard. Luckily, we are not struggling against the Gyarados per se. You know, because it has a dual typing, the Mega Drain doesn't do a lot of damage up front, but at least it does hit, you know? And so we get to move on to the Dragonair. We are boosted up, so Acid should be able to one-shot both of these. Now we got to be very careful here because, again, we are not faster than this guy. And Fly is pretty bad. So is Wing Attack. Luckily, we do eventually get him to go to sleep. He instantly wakes up. Wing Attack, because we are boosted, it doesn't matter if it's super effective. We are able to get through that very quickly. The fact that we are boosted is the only reason we survive that blizzard. That blizzard should have killed us, but we don't. Acid somehow takes on Dragonite. Dragonite goes down. We only had one reset against Lance, and that feels so good, so right, so powerful, right? Oddish, I honestly love this original kind of watercolor version of Oddish. He looks so confident, funny enough. He's kind of like, yeah. And I like that because that's kind of what's happening here. Going up against the rival here, we do take another like hit in terms of accuracy, but then it doesn't matter because of a critical hit. It's funny, I was about to talk about the stats thing again, and then watching the HP instantly hit 0 kind of stops you in your track, and you just kind of go, yeah, that does make sense, I suppose. Thanks. So one of the interesting things here too is that Sand Slash could actually do a lot more damage with Slash, or honestly even Earthquake, but the big thing is that it's looking at the fact that I'm Grass type, and so it's instantly going for Poison Sting to have the poison super effectiveness against me, but because I'm also part poison, it's not doing much. So we do kind of luck out in terms of like the AI until we get to Alakazam again. Yep, okay, that does track, We are at level 76. Level 76 should be more than enough for Oddish. We are 2 hours, 15 minutes in, which is not necessarily an amazing time, unamazing time, but it's also not the worst that we've seen here. As I mentioned earlier, we can clean this up in the future. I do believe that Oddish will be one of the Pokemon that we eventually come back to, because I'm feeling pretty good about this. 12 resets. We are boosted up. Now that we have made it past Alakazam, it should be a clean sweep. We take out Exeggutor, Ninetales, Magneton. Vaporeon does not go down instantly to a Mega Drain. I actually kind of think Acid could have done it. But either way, Aurora Beam's not enough. It's back, but so are we. And we get a victory at 2 hours, 15 minutes, and 57 seconds. And I think it's going to be fun eventually to come back and compare Vileplume's time once we get that one, and compare that to the best Oddish run for when we redo it eventually. I think it'll be cool to see just how different those will be, but I think they'll still be kind of similar. I think that's one of the cool things. It'll be kind of scaled, but it'll still be equivalent, if that makes any sense. But that does it for Oddish. Honestly, I don't have a lot much to say outside of what I've already mentioned for this great little guy. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have stuck around through this section of the video, please consider giving us a like, a comment especially would be great. Subscribing would also be pretty perfect. Any kind of interaction you can give to smaller content creators like myself always goes a long way. I appreciate you all very much for checking this one out, and I will catch you next Monday for another solo challenge in Pokemon Yellow.